Today on IT Unplugged, we're going to talk about how to do effective cybersecurity training so your employees don't fall asleep.
At M2 Technology, we're on a mission to make IT accessible to everyone. Join us on our journey to demystify the ever-evolving world of business technology. Are you ready to get unplugged?
Welcome back to IT Unplugged. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Mike.
Today we're going to talk about training your employees for cybersecurity and keeping your business safe. So there's a really interesting statistic that came out from IBM that 95% of breaches are caused by human error. So, I guess this is kind of a softball, but, Mike, why is it so important to train your employees when it comes to cybersecurity?
To prevent or help prevent human error.
Wrap it up. We're done. Okay. Okay. Let's expand on that.
You're welcome.
Bit. Yeah.
It definitely to kind of piggyback off that though, right? So if it's something just as simple as like the email comes through, right? Like, hey, I am, your boss. I need you to do this thing for me. I'm really busy right now. Like, please do this and get back to me on my cell phone. Right? Something as simple as that might seem simple to you or I. Maybe somebody else somewhere sees that and is like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Boss man contacted me or boss lady contacted this is crazy. Like, this must be a big deal. She never contacts me directly, runs wild with it. Next thing you know, anything could happen. Yeah. Right. Or the same thing, maybe it's like a novice help desk type person, right? And it's, hey, I'm Brandon. I need my password reset. I'd email you, but I don't know my password. Can't email you. So I'm calling you.
Sure.
Oh, wow. That's wild. Yeah. It checks off.
Yeah.
Like, here you go.
Yeah.
Right, then you just gave away credentials. So some really basic level training could help prevent that.
Yeah, and that's it, right? It's like a lot of basic stuff. What are some of the negatives though that could happen if you didn't do this? Because it's a little bit alarming how many companies don't do any kind of training at all. So like they might be able to get away with it for a little bit, but what's kind of the snowball effect when you just neglect it completely or you don't really prioritize it at all?
Like just completely neglecting or not prioritizing training?
Yeah.
Besides employees that, let's say, like that kind of more unaware employee,
sure.
Besides them just completely staying in the dark, overall security is less. Peace of mind is not there. As a business owner, perhaps you care a lot about your organization and its security and your well-being, but maybe the employees don't know that or they're unaware, and you need to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
Things change too. So what was a threat 3 years ago or earlier this year or earlier this month, maybe that is still a threat, but not to the same extent that the new threat 2.0, right?
Yeah,
that's now you have to stay ahead of the curve with that.
Yeah, I think I think it's interesting. It's like, because you said that your employees aren't going to know that it's important. So, I think about being in a company and let's say you hit the sales goal and it's like, oh, we're having a grill out or we're having a pizza party, and it's sending that message like, oh, you know what's important? Hitting sales goal, right? Like
everybody loves a pizza party.
Yeah, everybody loves a pizza party. It's the default, right? But if you never talk about cybersecurity or you never celebrate anything, related to security or cybersecurity or talk about it at all, it just is something that the regular employee is not going to think about, even though human error is 95% of breaches, right? So, I've heard everything from, we don't have time to do this, or like, I don't know how to do it. And I think that is like a great question. Like, what do you think is effective training when it comes to cybersecurity?
Actual real world examples, right? So that's like top tier, right?
Okay.
Creme de la creme is real world examples, or depending on the type of training you're trying to do. Let's say like email as an example, like phishing or spam email training.
Yeah.
Extremely targeted or tailored to that organization. So if we're doing something internally, maybe instead of just saying, "Hey, I am your boss," in the email, in this example, maybe we put, like, "Hey, I am," and then your boss's name, and "Hey, I would have team," "Hey, we Teams message a lot." Okay, we'll tell them that, like, "Hey, I would have Teams you." So, I would have Teams you, but oh man, I'm tied up on this thing, and then maybe we even reference off of an Outlook event that's happening to try to really make the person think, right? And you're not trying to trick them and get them caught up, except you kind of are, because if they fall for it, right, then hey, this is a good learning experience. And if they don't, and they catch on right away, and they're like, this doesn't seem right, good. Well, they're reading their emails.
Well, I mean, all right, let me advocate on behalf of all these employees out here, because you're a mean IT guy, all right, sending these phishing emails and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, really trying to hammer it to them. Is that really fair? I mean, is somebody going to have all that information when they're reaching out? And like, people actually get. Some people get reprimanded for clicking on these phishing emails. So why? Tell me, give me the scenario. Why is it actually fair, Mike?
People are people, and people suck. So occasionally, a bad doer is going to be very smart, right? And the bad doer maybe has access to your entire 365 profile, to include your Outlook calendar and your contacts and your messages and your prior messages and new messages coming in, and they have rules created. And hey, anything that mentions finance. Take out of Brandon's inbox, put it into this folder that's called, Brandon's junk. And you would maybe think nothing of that, right? Because you're like, I don't know, that's where my junk goes. I don't worry about it. And you don't even know that you're missing some of these emails that are coming in, but really somebody's keeping tabs on all of your financial documents or whatever the case may be. So to pull off of your Outlook calendar and messages and existing real world things, to build an example for preventing spam, I think that's fair.
Okay. Well,
it might not be applicable to every situation.
Yeah.
Somewhere with 2 employees and one of them knows, because you're working with them to set this up. Maybe that's kind of malicious if you're like just attacking the other person. But a large organization.
It's just to Darla. Darla's the only one we're sending.
Like, hey, if she's the only one that's falling for it, maybe Darla needs some help.
Well, no, I mean, playing devil's advocate, right? Like, looking at that, I do think it's fair, but I think the follow-up is where the difference is really made. We did some training recently where we talked about phishing emails and different things, and I actually had someone come up to me and they're like, yeah, my company has done simulations and I've fallen for it twice. And she's like, if I do it again, like, I'm going to be in big trouble. And I was like, well, what have they done after? You know what I mean? Like, what have they done to make it so you don't click on the next one? Because it can't just like constantly be a slap on the wrist. Like, there needs to be real, true education behind it, and not just like, yep, you did it twice, don't do it again.
No pizza party for you.
Yeah, and we're canceling it for the whole team. So there's your shame, and make sure you never click on it again. I mean,
thanks, Darla.
Yeah, Darla. But it becomes like debilitating, where if you're not sitting down after and showing them the red flags and say, hey, what can you do in the future? Or, I mean, like, even just setting them up for success in some way, like, that is what you
I mean, you're
owe
not
to
like
these
publicly
people.
harassing these people, right? It's benefiting everyone. Mm-hmm. So maybe there's a little bit of shame that they feel, but it's not like you're putting them on a pedestal in front of the entire office and you're like, shame. Yeah, that's not the case. I mean, it's
you never seen that before?
I've never seen public shaming like that. No, maybe like Salem witch trials-esque.
I feel like so I think I mentioned this before, but like that this kind of goes into the next section as well, about like fostering a culture of care around cybersecurity. But that accident counter, like in retail space, right, where it's like you're on day like 45 and on day 50 everybody gets a $50 gift card, but like Susie, I shouldn't say, let's say Jim. Okay, Jim.
You're always picking on Susie.
I'm
Susie
picking on
Darla.
Susie and Darla. I need to move away from this. But Jim, cut his finger on something, and he's like, I kind of need stitches. He's like, I need to tell somebody about this. And they're like, okay, Jim, but this resets to 0 now. It's like that public.
No more gift card.
Yeah, no more gift card for the rest of the team. Like it's one of those things with IT and cybersecurity. Like, there's a little bit of shame in it, but it should mostly be education if you're doing this.
Kind of side tangent, but kind of not from the counter though. The opposite end of that spectrum is if the counter, right? If the counter never gets reset to the point where, like, there's one place that we work with that I think it's got to just be a joke now, but it's up on their wall, and I think we've talked about this before, but the counter's at like 9,740 days or something, right? And like every time I go, it keeps getting higher, and I'm like,
Is it the accident counter? Or?
Yeah, like I don't think that you guys have gone, 15 years without an accident. Like have you been here 15 years?
Yeah.
Is this from a different business? You just carried it forward?
That's a different kind of, we don't really care because we're not updating it, right? Yeah. The other side of the spectrum. When it comes to training though, okay, so my wife works in healthcare, and she's, having to do training on cybersecurity, and it's modules on a computer with a voiceover and text on a screen. Not the most engaging thing in the world. What do you think is, you said real world examples, but like what are some other effective ways to teach people about cybersecurity? Like what would be your preference if you were running a business and you just said, hey, you go ahead and train people?
Sure. We've gone in places and assisted staff with that type of training. It's a lot of times it's email based. So just speaking from that side of it, kind of like best practices. And then if we're doing like a mail, like a spam mail approach, reviewing results, like you said, calling out like red flags or what we would maybe see as this is really common, but
sure,
maybe not everybody knows that. So especially if they failed,
oh
no, I know all about this. Okay, well then why did you click on it? So, pulling the email up, hey, look at this header, right? It says that it's coming from Brandon, but it's actually coming from somebody at Gmail.
Yeah.
Okay, like that's a red flag. Misspelled words, stuff like that. So definitely real world examples, but of the thing that they actually received. If we're talking about like just network security in general, maybe more common practice, like, hey, you have somebody that comes in, they're a vendor. It's a printer vendor. They're here to meet with the office manager, and you're the receptionist. And the first thing that they do is they ask for, hey, can I get the Wi-Fi? Right? And you're like, oh yeah, no problem. Like you're waiting in the lobby, of course, right? Which Wi-Fi do you want to give out? Right? Do you want to give out the guest Wi-Fi? Do you want to give out the private internal Wi-Fi? Like which one, right? Just reviewing that. Hey, you don't really want to give out internal to anybody except an employee, right?
Sure.
You can see things. You can see the server. You can see files, right? Just real world examples or best practice for their exact scenario.
Yeah.
Trying to refer it back to a not hypothetical, so then somebody can kind of grasp it better.
Yeah. No, that absolutely makes sense. I think that kind of challenging and like that's an interesting word to use. Maybe I shouldn't say challenging, but just like asking questions and scenarios like that are really, really helpful, because then people, they should have the opportunity to like talk through that thing and like go in their mind and walk through that thought process, which is really, really important, rather than watching a video and blanking out or being told something and then have questions come up and not actually have anybody to ask it to. Like that's the biggest thing.
Medical specifically, I've seen those. This sounds bad, but those training videos or whatever. I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's exactly the case. It's like, all right, if I hit next 63 times and I mute my computer, I can do this during the morning huddle. So perfect. Then I'm good for the quarter, and then we'll have to do it. And it's in fall. I don't even care. It's gonna be cold outside, so good. And you're like, you're doing one of these, you're like, yep, yeah. Oh, sorry. Well, let me move my mouse quick. Next is over here. Okay, yeah, yep. And it's you're not learning anything.
Yeah.
It's just a task that everyone dislikes then, and it's doing you're not benefiting anyone.
Yeah, 100%. You're just doing it to do it. Maybe it's for your cybersecurity insurance or something like that. And like, oh yeah, everybody completed this, but did they really? I think admitting that there's always that first thing in a learning module where you're like, do I have to watch the whole thing and will it count, or can I just hit that next
If I grab the play bar,
and move it over, doesn't? Yes, let's skip.
Oh, it does. Oh,
thing.
Cool, perfect.
Yep. But we're gonna get this done right away. And I think so. This is also like a thought that I can have with fostering a culture of cybersecurity importance. Like the tools you pick for that stuff sends a message. If you're going to not have somebody come in person or not do a training that's engaging, you're automatically saying like, yeah, we don't really care about this. So
yeah.
With that being said, what's some of the best training that you've kind of seen in the past? Like companies, I guess you don't have to call it the companies, but like companies that have done it really well. What does that maybe look like?
I don't want to say it relies heavily on like the organization themselves, except if there's somebody that's on staff, let's say it's an HR person or whatever the role might be, like office manager or something, that doesn't just like care, but they kind of like get into that. It's kind of exciting, and okay, yeah, we're gonna organize like a day, and we're gonna bring everybody in for a little lunch, and we have presentation and this and whatever. That definitely helps. Medical or like dental or whatever, it's kind of exciting because a lot of times then there's like a lunch or there's a thing or there's an activity that's around it that's not just like, okay, everyone's going to sit here and you're going to learn and you're going to like it. Right. And if that's the whole mantra behind it, like then you're in a next scenario and you're just waiting out the clock, death by PowerPoint, and there's a monotone voice. So if you can kind of get everybody on the same page with like, this is, for the greater good of the company, that's very beneficial. I've seen activities before. Not like Jeopardy, but you know what I mean? Like that type of thing where there's, hey, we're going to ask some questions from the thing that you just learned. Kind of old school, kind of generic, but it's fun. Yeah. It gets everybody on board. And if somebody's wildly against it, maybe that's just that type of person. They're just, that's personal.
And I think that's like, it's also the attitude from the top down, right? So if you have your CEO or your VP and they're like, ugh, I don't get cybersecurity, I'm going to sit this one out. You know what I mean? Or like, I don't use any of that stuff. Like that sends a big message too.
Stay the safest, we'll just not use computers.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So creating that safe environment where people can make mistakes, people can ask questions and different things like that, but then also going from the top down. And then I think another thing we talked about, like picking the right training tools, but then having an IT team that doesn't like give away access or tools that like allow security allow security breaches or just security issues all the time.
Like the far end of that, right? Like you're not shooting yourself in the foot, and that sounds kind of mean, but a lot of times that could be the case too, right? Like you said, you have a maybe there's a supplemental type staff, and there's an MSP that picks up the slack of more admin type work, and then there's some entry level people, and the entry level people unknowingly or knowingly give full admin access to, a manager that might not need it, but there's one day that she's all hot and bothered and they want it. Yeah. I'm getting this, right? So you get it and then you forget about it and it's 8 months later and you're like, where did this thing, Craig is admin? Like as of when? Like, well, that was a big day. It's like, okay. Yeah. That's kind of scary.
Yeah. It's things like that. And this is kind of a silly example, but getting like a complaint, like my computer keeps on timing out every time I go to the bathroom. It's like, okay, well, you should lock it. You know what I mean? But then I've seen like people go ahead and go, oh, there's actually a Chrome extension that just keeps your computer open all the time.
It wiggles your mouse.
Yeah.
It
wiggles, nice. Yeah. Like, let's just put that on your computer for you. And then like when they're in the coffee shop, they close it. And if someone would take it and open it, they're still logged in. It's like a never sleep. It's like, oh, well, I close that ticket. It's like, yeah, you also just jeopardize the company because
you do that.
Yes.
That is not helping anyone.
No, not at all. So yeah, awesome. So these are some great takeaways and tips, I think, if you're trying to do an effective cybersecurity training and really helping those people in your company, because they didn't really sign on to be cybersecurity experts. So what can we do to set them up for success so they can essentially just do their job the way that they need? So thanks so much for listening to IT Unplugged. We hope that you subscribe, do all the things below, and see you on the next episode.